Hi guys, welcome back to Amalgamated Moi. I recently DM'd the Dungeons & Dragons campaign for the first time, and here's how it went. Before I get into it, I suppose I should clarify that it wasn't actually D&D. Since we had 3 new players out of the 5, I put together a D&D-esque game, simplifying some things to not only keep things less complicated, but to give myself a break in DMing, so as not to try to balance the game between experienced and inexperienced players. So I put together a game using the foundations of D&D, but really just homebrewed the whole game, which caused some problems we'll get into later. Starting us off, our heroes began in the town of Verdun, where, in the town square, they noticed a cleric worryingly pacing outside of the cathedral. When they spoke to him, he guided the party into the cathedral, and the mayor of the town was waiting inside. He told our heroes that the town crusaders set out to find a holy relic across the sea. However, they should have returned weeks ago, and asked if our heroes could assist in finding the crusaders or the relic. Here, we introduce our heroic party. Tala Mooncrest, the werewolf noblewoman barbarian. Spork, the orc martial artist. Liesel, the holy mage and only sane member of the party. Sanbalot, the arsonist assassin. And Gimli, the way too powerful dwarf swordsman. After forcing them to agree to this arrangement, I guided them north to a mountain range, where they encountered a mineshaft. Now, I prepared 2 scenarios for the mineshaft, and used neither of them, as the party went completely off rails here. Right outside the mineshaft, they found a skeleton of a dwarf, of which every party member proceeded to steal at least 1 bone off of, and Tala, who took the skull, attempted to wear it. With the skull being too small, she gave it to Gimli, who I gave a +1 to intimidation for wearing the skull. This may or may not come back to bite me later. Now, entering the mineshaft, there are 5 dwarven miners digging out gemstones. A sane party might talk to them, but instead this party stole the gemstones and without saying a word, killed all the dwarves. Luckily, Liesel, our holy mage, had prepared the cantrip of revelation, allowing her to reveal that the dwarves' last thoughts before being murdered were of fear of whatever lies in the room ahead. At this point, the party came to a split, of turning back, or fighting whatever was in the next room. Unfortunately, Sanbalot used a kindling kit to light the dwarves on fire, and one of the wooden support pillars burned with them, taking down the entrance to the mine, meaning the only way forward was to delve deeper. In the second room, they encountered an ogre, which, surprisingly, they did not engage with right away, instead waiting until it turned its back and pushing it into the mysterious black liquid in the corner of the cave. Once they did this, the liquid consumed the entire ogre, introducing the party to a pit of living tar. This was when Tala used one of her starting items, a linguistics book, which, once used, allowed you to communicate with anything that uses the language you select. Choosing whatever language Tar speaks, Tala asked if it wanted to kill them, in which the Tar responded, "No, but the beast will." With this, a lindworm dragon erupted from the far corner of the cave, and combat was initiated. This is where I began to worry that the worm could not only get any hits on anyone, but they were really starting to deal a lot of damage to a monster that had more health than the final boss of the campaign. This was even more solidified when Liesel used her spell Transform Water, turning the dragon's saliva into hydrochloric acid, burning it from the inside out. Once the foe was slain, they reaped the rewards of Lindworm Fangs and Gimli taking the dragon's hands, attaching them to his skull mask, of which I, for whatever reason, awarded more intimidation points, along with the hands of some fallen dwarves, bringing the total to +5 intimidation. Here, the party split, as Spork and Sanbalot wanted to go back and attempt to dig their way out of the cave from the previous room, while the other 3 wanted to continue through the mines. As the party's assassin and martial artist were digging using some stolen pickaxes from the dwarf corpses scattered around the room, Liesel, Tala, and Gimli encountered a nest of giant spiders, which they killed by merely throwing rocks and one-shotting the spiders, and continuing out of the mine after retrieving the other 2 party members. Leaving the mine with their pillaged spoils, the party went out in search of a town. See, when they left the mine, I told them that there was a field that led up to the ocean, and expecting them to go toward the ocean, I didn't prepare much for outside this path. But instead, they wanted to search for a town, and eventually I relented, making up a town on the spot and allowing them to sell their goods. Also something I didn't prepare for, so I had to improvise the economics in this town, creating some mathematical disparities in what they sold. It didn't matter much anyway, since after selling all the items they stole from the dwarves, Sanbalot ran around the town burning it to the ground, leaving but a pile of ash in his wake. Finally heading to the ocean, our adventurers encountered a shipwreck, with the seal of Verdun on its torn sail. Covering the ship was a collection of giant carnivorous slugs, which of course it only took Gimli and Spork to cleave through, before heading downstairs into the belly of the ship, where instead of entering the final boss room, Spork broke through the side of the ship, causing me to make the final boss to teleport himself onto the beach. And so let me introduce to you Lycos, the corrupted Divine Inquisitor, and his army of zombified crusaders. Without saying a word to him, the party attacked. Now remember when I said that the boss had less health than the Lindworm? Well, that became very apparent, as Spork was first in combat order and took half of Lycos' health with no difficulty. Realizing that my final boss fight might be over too quickly, Lycos spent a turn to triple his health and to add 3 to his armor class, greatly confusing Liesel, who had been keeping track of armor classes for each enemy. For the first time, I brought a party member below 3 HP, putting Tala on 2, and Sandbala on 5. But in the end, they killed my Inquisitor and retrieved the Holy Chalice from the shipwreck. Now, I fully intended them to return to Verdun like normal people, and give the chalice back to the cleric. But this was before the campaign began. Now that I had seen the chaos that was just caused, I could not begin to guess what they would do next. So I fast-traveled them back to Verdun, and, as you might have expected, they refused to give the chalice to the mayor, instead using Gimli's intimidation roll of a natural 20. With a +5, they convinced the mayor that Liesel was the goddess of wine and needed to keep the chalice, bringing the campaign to a close with Sandbalot lighting Verdun also on fire. As much fun as it is to complain about how off-script the campaign went, it was a lot of fun being the DM, and having to improvise so much. I ended up not using about 5 pages of dialogue scripts, given the party talked to no one but the merchants that I had to make up, but I've already started to work on a new one-shot campaign for this group, and really should be working on that instead of this video, but I'm sure it's fine. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little bit of a different video, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye!